Agriculture remains a vital sector in Nigeria as it accounts for over 26% of the nation's GDP, while it is the major employer of labor in economic activities. Despite this robust data, the value chain of agriculture is still yet to be harnessed effectively. In the 21st century, it has become critical to adopt technology, and this informed the book Rise of Digital Agriculture, written by Akin Alabi, co-founder of Corporate Farmers TV. At the formal book launch in Lagos, Mr. Akin Alabi shared his inspiration behind the book.
Basically, two things actually came to mind when I wrote that book. Number one, changing the narrative of building newer generations. I call them the new agricultural talents in the entire ecosystem. And the only way you could attract these young agripreneurs or talents is using the power of digitalization, technology. So I knew that the only way I could easily get the information out is by writing a strong, valid, well-researched book that will speak to the minds of these younger generations about how they could begin to change their narrative of agriculture using the power of technology and digitalization, which I have done about 20 years. Okay, and I knew that the current situation, the current pandemic, has opened our eyes to see how to begin to do things differently, think differently, and also do business differently. Particularly to the sector where I belong to, is an avenue where we can begin to now do agriculture differently. And it's only technology, digitalization that can transform it and make it more better. You know, it's just now. It's just now. I was saying in my welcome speech, I said, look, for the likes of IITA and Dr. Adima Additional to speak on digitalization this year means that now something new is beginning to happen in the ecosystem. And that is why I wrote that book. And that is why that book is quite important for everybody to have it.
For Mr. Bolaji Akimboro, Chairman, Vorian Curly, RDA reinforces the need for Nigeria to embrace agri-tech and use it as a basis to uplift hundreds of millions of citizens from poverty.
The essential message of the book is transformation, how technologies transform agriculture. And it allows the reader to understand that from three perspectives: the production side of the equation, the investment side of the equation, and the consumption side of the equation. Now, what people need to realize is that agriculture as a share of our economy is actually significantly larger than our oil and services sector, significantly larger than telecoms, significantly larger than even banking. But because it's such a sector that appears ED, a lot of people do not look at it as an interesting segment. So this book is part of the early stage attempts to communicate one message to Nigeria and the rest of the world that this is agri-tech rising. That's the way I'll phrase it. I mean, you've heard about the achievement of financial technology companies, but the next wave of investment opportunities are agri-tech companies that are deploying technologies in agriculture to enable the wealth in agriculture to spread throughout the economy. So that's how the book changes things.
And what are the enablers that will help agri-tech thrive in Nigeria? Agri is contributing over 26% to our GDP, highest employer of labor. Well, like you said, we're not looking at the backward level of agriculture, looking at the language of the future. How can we begin to create the enabler infrastructure?
I mean, the major thing is really market linkages. And that's why actually we set up the company that you call Vorian Corelli. Because the market linkage problem, it's a very interesting problem. When markets work, it's like a rising tide. It lifts everybody out of poverty. But when they don't work, everybody sinks into the ocean. So the major problem that needs to be solved is the market linkage problem. Because the minute people know that markets work, and these markets are markets that are functional and can be trusted, you begin to see that everybody prospers. From the farmer in the village, down to the exchange at the very top, to the regulator, which is the government, its agencies like the CBN, things changes dramatically. So let's make market works.
Seasoned financial journalist Mr. Bosun Omofaye believes there is need for proper diversification in Nigeria's agri sector and ecosystem.
I think one of the most saddest thing is that we're not taking agriculture as it ought to be. 2 days ago, the GDP report for Kenya was released. The economy shrank by 1.1%, so went into a recession for the first time in 20 years. But do you know that within that GDP, which was 1.1% negative, the agri sector grew 6.3% in the same period. So while the entire Kenyan economy collapsed by 1.1%, the agri sector alone grew by 6.3%. And how did Kenya do it? Throughout last year, despite the pandemic, Kenya was producing massively what you call horticulture sector. They were producing tea, they were producing flowers, roses, and they were exporting it to Europe, to US, and other parts of the Eastern Europe, all the way to Afghanistan and elsewhere. Now, Kenya is making so much money. So that GDP collapse or recession would have been much deeper and bigger, but that was moderated by agriculture in Kenya by 6.3% in just one quarter alone, not annual, just for the last quarter of last year. So that tells you how much agriculture can help you mitigate. If Nigeria had had the kind of agriculture sector that Kenya has, for example, or that Rwanda has, or that Egypt has, the 6.1% GDP contraction that we had last year would have been maybe just 1%. So we need the commodity exchange to function. We need the financial markets to come in here. We need the Ministry of Agriculture to do a whole lot more. Now, my final point is this. We need to diversify agriculture itself. Now, we've been talking about diversifying oil into agriculture. I say it is time we diversify agriculture itself as a subsector. And what do I mean? When you talk about farming or agriculture in Nigeria, almost everybody you talk to wants to go into some kind of food products. What about producing tea in Taraba, the Mambila Plateau, and what have you as massive exports? Now look at this massive winter in Western Europe and in Asia and elsewhere. If Nigeria is exporting tea and coffee, like Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, down all the way down to Malawi and Rwanda, imagine what we'll be selling and the effects that will generate from tea or coffee. The entire Kwara and Kogi states, years and decades ago, used to be Nigeria's hub for coffee production. I came from that state. And when I was told that story, I was shed tears. They've all disappeared. Now, you have a Highland tea today produced in Taraba State. You don't even have it in Lagos. I spent about 40,000 naira to call them in Taraba State and get 2 cartons of the Highland tea produced in Taraba State all the way to the airport in Abuja and down to Lagos Airport before I could get it. Now, that was just about 2 years ago. 2 cartons. Now they produce this Highland tea, which is far better than some produced by the multinationals. I don't want to mention their names. And they have what you call the green tea, which is produced here in Nigeria. One single tea bag in the hot water can do about 3-4 different cups of tea. And it's produced in Taraba State. And nobody knows about it. So we need to diversify agriculture itself. Let some people go into floriculture, which is production of flowers, and start exporting it. And how did Kenya make so much money in flower last year? Now let me just explain it simple. Because of the loss of lives around the world, especially in Europe, people couldn't go to attend burials and whatever. So when some families or friends lose loved ones, they send flowers to them. So there was so much production of flowers, which is, sorry for your loss, I can't attend the funeral or whatever, please take a flower. So flower was selling last year, just growing a flower field. So who is producing flowers in Nigeria? Whether they are roses or hibiscus flower or whatever other flowers. So we should not about exporting yam because government said let us do yam. Then the Central Bank of Nigeria is doing Ankos Gorowa in rice. Everybody wants to produce rice. Who else is producing something else within the agri value chain? Now the whole case is made even more dynamic with the AFCFTA. So the whole world is looking forward to what can we do. So I love this. The rise of digital agriculture is the way to the future. But then my own message is, where is the diversification of agriculture itself? So that we don't just keep on producing something. It's good Lagos State is building the 3rd largest rice mill in the world. But hold on, can someone else build the largest tea factory? Can someone else build the largest coffee, processing plants? let us diversify agriculture so that in the next 5-10 years, we won't find out that all of us have just been doing exactly just the same thing. And we now come back and say, hold on, why don't somebody else be producing something else all this while? So agriculture itself needs diversification.
The Commissioner for Agriculture and Rural Development in Lagos, Honorable Abisola Olusonya, described the book as apt, considering the need for transformational policies in the country.
The book, The Rise of Digital Agriculture by Mr. Akin Alabi, I think it's a phenomenal book. I think it's coming at the right time considering what is happening within the agri space across the world. With the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, we've all seen that food is actually integral to keeping any economy secure, any economy healthy, any economy up and running. And I think digitization of this sector is actually critical for us to be able to meet the food security needs globally. Then when you come down to Nigeria and then to Lagos, this is actually very critical. In Africa, when you talk of digitization, when you talk of using technology, we're still a bit behind. But I believe that as more people read this book, as more people get enlightened and knowledgeable about the possibilities of using technology, of going digital in agriculture, then we begin to see the opportunities that are abound and people begin to latch onto these opportunities and we begin to see changes in our sector. Agricultural sector is actually one of the most fundamental to the human race. It's actually one of the most profitable. It takes time, it takes persistence, but technology has actually shortened the timeline or the cycle between production, between profitability, between consumption. So it's very critical that people get this book, people read it, people understand, and then we begin to have conversations around how we can move from agriculture to agribusiness. What Dr. Akin Alabi always says is we need to move away from that mindset that agriculture is archaic, that agriculture is a dirty job, that agriculture is for the illiterate. Agriculture is agribusiness in itself. So the same way you have people in the manufacturing sector, people in trading or in supply and whatever other kind of business you want to think of. They are in these businesses to make a profit. Same with agriculture. So when you see a farmer, it's not so much about, oh, he's just a farmer and he just wants to grow crops and all. The end result is the farmer also wants to make money. The farmer wants to be able to send his or her kids to the best of schools, have the best of houses, have cars and anything to make life comfortable. So when we begin to look at agriculture from that mindset, then we need to begin to change what we think of agriculture. We need to now begin to see that agriculture in itself is actually a system. It's a process-driven system. So the key thing is, how do we use digitization? How do we use technology to enhance this process, to ensure that the process is more efficient, there's higher productivity, and then people get to make more money. So I think it's important for people to get these books, and I think I'm also very happy that this book has been written by a very young person working ardently with the Lagos State Ministry of Agriculture. And so I implore each and every one of us, the youth especially, to get this book, read it, see the opportunities, and then begin to collaborate with other people who have the resources to begin to bring this digitization and technology use to reality.
According to the president of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, digital agriculture is the next frontier for economic development in Africa. It is therefore a clarion call on Nigeria to align its policies and programs in a way that enables agri-tech to transform the socio-economic landscape.